this presentation, and thanks to each and every one of you for sticking around towards the end of the day. I know it's a tough thing when you're going to a conference and you're sessioned out, but I guarantee you'll be happy that you stuck around for this one. So welcome to the session on Beyond ADL, Fostering Creativity and Learning Opportunities. All through this presentation, if I can keep my eye on the chat window, I'll try and answer your questions, but please, give me your ideas too, because I don't have a lock on everything that can be done in this area or in many areas. So, and in the session notes, the slide deck, the PowerPoint slide deck, a PDF version of them is available, so you can download that later. So activities of daily living cover the basics of health and safety. And I've worked primarily in the adult care system, and I've seen that as a large, large focus of what that system does every day. I like to joke about the fact that you can take folks out for a trip to the library, have a wonderful time, and if one person falls or trips getting into the van to go back to the agency or the school, that's what you're measured on. Not so much that they had a learning and literacy experience, but that. So I think we really have to encourage people to look beyond just that health and safety requirement, and not to put anybody in jeopardy, but there's so much more that makes up a person rather than their basic ADL. So let's look at each person as having the potential for lifelong learning and to have great individuality, great personality, and each person is someone that is so exciting to get to know. So with that ambitious introduction, I'll present some ideas on how we can do more than just the basics. So my name is Jordan Jankus, and here's my contact information. I retired from the ARC Westchester in New York this past June, but like so many people in this field, I'll never really retire. I started plastic learning earlier this year, and I'm interested in exploring how we can use the tools of everyday personal technology, tablets, smartphones, smart speakers, smart TVs, and how we can use it to tap into the ability of the brain to constantly change and adapt. The wonderful and expanding subject of neuroplasticity. And I have to say one thing, I'm recording this from my home in Vermont, and you hear Vermont and you think of mountaintops and all that, but I'm here in the little bucolic town of Wallingford, Vermont, and right outside my office window is Route 7. So as I'm talking and you hear a tractor trailer go by, I'm sorry, it's the country, but still it's transportation and commerce. So please, reach out to me. I have this email address, and also I try and regularly, I should do it more often, but I try and regularly tweet. So the inspiration for what I do is Jessica, my adult daughter. And tomorrow I'm traveling down to New York to pick her up, and she's coming up for a Vermont weekend. She has great spirit, and she's always learning and developing, perhaps at a slower pace than some of us, but she never stops connecting and learning. Jess began her tech journey back in the 80s, and she started out with an Apple IIc. That goes way back. Now, many years later, she uses her iPad to FaceTime with me, with her brother and her sister-in-law, all her relatives. And it's a great way for her to connect with her family and in between the physical visits that she comes up here for. I've been in the adult system of human services for quite some time, and I've worked in case management, residential care, recreation, advocacy, and most recently helping the staff of my agency to learn the power of personal technology and how it can make the difference of and how it can make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. Much of what I'll share with you today was developed during my time supporting people in our day hab and residential programs. It's not specifically geared towards adults, and you can adapt it to people of all ages. You'll see some familiar resources and hopefully some new ones, all used in the service of making learning interesting. So here's the first activity. Folks with developmental disabilities, cognitive disabilities, sometimes it's hard to get out on trips, especially during the COVID time. It's hard to physically get places. Part of it might be the financial resources of your district or the financial resources of an agency, but it's hard to get out sometimes. But that's not a problem anymore because we have the internet and we can make virtual visits to museums. People with disabilities, for a lot of them, they haven't been in a museum or even thought about art. But I'm not so much interested in teaching art history or styles. I'm interested in getting folks to really look and observe. Observation and focus, looking beyond one's narrow world and seeing more is a really important skill as students transition to the world beyond high school. In the community, at work, in your home, a person must look, observe, and really see everything around them. Think vocationally, learning a new job. You have to have your focus on your task at hand, making sure that you're going around the community and you're doing it safely. That's an important thing. Be aware of what's around you. Instead of just taking a glance, really take a closer look. And I guarantee it, you'll discover many things. So let's take a look at a piece of art. In this exercise, you'll notice that I love John Singer Sargent. So he's one of my favorite artists, but you can use any painting, any sculpture, anything that gets people to have a focus. It's this exercise of art on the web, visiting museum collections is really great if you can put it on a whiteboard, on a smart TV, a projection, anything that the whole group can focus upon. And then you have everybody looking at the picture and we can start asking some questions. Not questions on whether this is impressionism or abstract art, but what's the color of this lady's dress? What's the color of her chair? Color of her hair? Is she wearing any jewelry? Is she looking at anybody in particular? In what direction is she looking? What do you think she's thinking about? Is she happy or sad? Can we look at the person sitting next to us and tell us the color of their clothes? And this comes from an old exercise I did where I took pictures. I took pictures of everybody's shoes. And then I had it on the camera and had each person look at that picture of a shoe and try and match it up with who it belonged to. Just with the idea of, we sometimes don't look at the person sitting right next to us. A lot of time the focus is on the teacher or the staff, but how do we expect people to socialize if they're not even aware of their neighbor? So who is this person? What is this person looking at? Okay, and oh, John's wearing a blue shirt today. Oh, well, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed that before. What makes this painting different from a photo? And anybody here ever try and draw something by looking at something, not filling in a turkey at Thanksgiving time with Crayola, but actually looking at something and seeing if you can copy it and look at the details. And I'm not saying to become a great artist. but just look and see if your hand can trace some of that object that you see. And this painting was done in 1892, and that's great. But what is 1892? Was that a long time ago? Was that last week? You can start talking about time and history. Okay. So, just with this one example, and you can use, as I said, any piece of art, you can use any kind of historical thing. And just let's really take a look at it. Here's another picture, another sergeant picture. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But this is called On the Veranda. So we can ask these questions. What time of year is this? And you might know right away, but the idea is to show people the picture and let them say what time of the year it is. Is it fall? Is it winter? Is it summer? What time of year is it? How many women are in the picture? Let's do some arithmetic. 1, 2, we'll count them up. And what color is the man's tie? Just don't say this is a man. What is he wearing? He's, oh, look, he's got a brown jacket. He's got a red tie. That's interesting. Is the scene inside a house or outside of the house? Do you see any flowers? Yes, there's flowers. Well, let's take a look at them. Okay. And how many people are wearing hats? Some of them are, some of them aren't. And does anybody here sew? Because that appears to be what they're doing in this picture. Would you like to learn how to sew? If you do, how would you go about that? Would you ask your mom or dad if you're still living with them, or if you're living in adult residence, living on your own? Is there somebody that you can reach out to that could teach you those skills, or maybe join a community club? Just going through the thought process on something. And we're not teaching impressionism. We're not teaching pointillism. We're not teaching any of that. What we're teaching is looking at things and observing. And once this gets started, I tell you, it gets pretty exciting because you get answers shooting at you left and right. And if somebody says, oh, this looks like a winter scene, come on, is this a winter scene? And it really creates for an exciting time. Here, again, the slide deck is in my session notes, are some websites for museums. There's so many out there. This is just a fraction of them. You know, from the Smithsonian to the Louvre, everybody has some kind of virtual gallery. Let me just take a pause and take a glass of water. I promise it's water. On that same type of observation exercise, this is something that I did with a bunch of folks, again, in a day program. And when you think of a lot of folks in day program, they would love to have a job, but that's something that they can reach for down the road. But even just to think about, how do things occur in this world? We're looking here at a teacher's desk. We're not in a museum. This is something that you would see every day in school or perhaps in your day program. And you just say, well, it's a desk. Well, let's just pause for a second. What is this desk made out of? Is it made out of metal? Yep, part of it. And it's also made out of wood. Where did they get the wood? Who cut down the wood? How did the wood get to the factory? Where was this desk made? Okay, and who designed the desk? Who is that a job that you can design things? Yes, it is. And how did that desk get from the factory to this classroom? Well, somebody had to bring it, had to go to a distributor and then be delivered here. Is that a job where you can work in a warehouse? Yes, it is. Can you deliver things off of a truck as a helper? Sure, that's possible. Again, back to real simple observation and arithmetic. How many drawers are in this? How many drawers are there, and why are there locks on the drawers? What are they trying to protect? Okay. And you can go on and on from here. This is not meant to be exhaustive, but take any object in the room and just let's say, how did that get here? And who made this? We get so used to all the things around us that are made by big industrial, we don't even think how it actually got there. So another interesting exercise. And boy, this is exciting. I still remember growing up, which was quite a while ago, but I remember everything on TV were soap operas. And they're still with us, not as many as there used to be, but now they've turned into plots in TV shows, primetime TV shows or streaming, and they all have the same dramatic structure, even though they don't call them soaps anymore. So this is an activity where you get a bunch of folks together and we start talking about, well, a story. Can we create a story, or should we just be passive and watching it? Why can't we create a story? Okay. And it's simple. All you need is a little imagination. And sometimes you have to be a little bit silly and make mental leaps, but that's what soap operas do all the time. So the great thing about a soap opera or some of these continuing shows on Netflix or whatever, it's just not one episode. It goes on forever. So you can start your own soap opera in your classroom. So one person, if they have some basic writing skills, they can be the scribe. They can write down what the story is and maybe transfer it into a Word document. And if somebody doesn't have that skill set in the classroom, then perhaps a teacher or a teacher assistant could be that person that records the story. So first step, turn on your imagination. Where's the story going to be set? Is it going to be in the cold mountains of Vermont? Maybe. Is it going to be in a big city, New York City, out west on a tropical island? Is it going to be happening in the modern day? Or can we go back in time? Maybe make it a Western. Who knows? Or maybe a Star Trek version. Anything is possible. Google, everybody knows Google, and there's pictures of almost everything in the world on Google. Take some Google pictures, add it to the text, and you have installment one of your soap opera. And you need characters, right? You need characters. So one thing that's sure as could be is that there's going to be characters that are doing good. There's going to be some characters that are intent on doing bad. There are characters that are going to get to be friends, and some people will be arch enemies. So who are the characters in your soap opera? Then, in order to have some interest, some dramatic tension, there's got to be some kind of conflict. Oh, we just opened a hotel on the most beautiful tropical island in the world, and we've spent millions on it, and we have a wonderful staff waiting for the guests to arrive. Oh my God, a pandemic happened. What are we going to do? And and how do you save the hotel from ruin? What imaginative things have to come up? And this is, as we all know, a very practical storyline. But oh my goodness, what happens? It's going to be the birthday of a very famous person. Thousands of people have come to the birthday party. The power goes out. Or some evil person has turned the power off. Whatever it is, you need some kind of dramatic tension, and you need some resolution. It can be in one episode or many episodes. A resolution might take 5 years to come to, but it can be all different kinds of stories. And so you do this. I'm not saying do it for the whole day, just 10, 15 minutes. This is this week's installment. And we have to come up with a name for a show. Don't call it Dallas. Don't call it The Days of Our Lives, but come up with something original. And this is the first installment. At the beginning of the next class session on this, you can read what happened last week, look at the pictures that are now part of your soap opera, and just continue on with the story. As long as things are interactive, that everyone is contributing in their own way to the story, it's stimulating content, everybody is engaged in some way. And guess what? This is a wonderful way for people to focus on some basic literacy skills. Great stuff, great stuff. And once again, through my many years of hard experience, I've done this a lot. I can promise you it works. You just have to be ready for some silly comments. Oh, Google Earth. This is nothing new to you folks. I'm sure you know everything about Google Earth, but stop and think. Let's not take everything for granted. Let's really think about Google Earth and what we can do for it, So again, if you can get everybody to focus on one screen at a time, I think that is the ideal thing. If everybody has their iPad looking at separate pictures, it kind of diffuses the exercise. But if you get folks to look at the picture on the smart board or whatever, or the Microsoft whiteboard, whatever it is, if you get the group's focus on that one picture, you can start talking about the world. What is the world? Is the world a square? No, it's this big round thing, big spherical thing. We can talk about directions, right? Where is the school? Where is your agency? Is it north of New York? Is it south of New York? Is it on the West Coast? Where is it? And then you can just type in address, maybe the address of where you are, and Google Earth will zoom into that spot. I did this when I was in New York in a day program, and it was in a town called Ossining. And I tell you, the guys went there every day to this program in Ossining, New York. Nobody knew anything about Ossining. By using Google Earth, all of a sudden, you get to see the town. You get to find out something of the history of the town. Just crazy, great stuff. So here we are in my new town. We just moved here formally in February. We sold our house in New York. Prior to that, we were working up here because of the pandemic. And then we finally said, let's settle here. Let's take our final chapter up in the beautiful Green Mountains of Vermont. So type in Wallingford, Vermont, zoom down, and you see the picture of the top of our house. And then you go into street level, and all of a sudden you see our house there with a tree that is turning color with fall going on. So now we can look not only at the house, but what is around it. On Street View, you can go and walk north. You can walk south. You can see what stores are around, what churches are around, what playgrounds are around. You can look at the various houses, talk about what color are the houses, talk about, are they old houses? Are they new houses? My house is 1804. Oh my God, what is 1804? That's a long time ago. So on and on, you can really look at this and use it in a variety of ways. Now, okay, I'm in Vermont, and you can ask the question, well, that's fascinating that you're in Vermont, but what's the major city in Vermont? Let's learn a little bit more about Vermont. And of course, Burlington is a major city up north, and you can find out about Burlington, click on it for more information, but you can go into a lot of detail, especially if you're talking about, well, let's go to Rome. They have so much information, not just the picture of Rome, but you can go into each area, find out fascinating things, Paris, Rome, New York, anywhere, and have a whole discussion on that. So you can also go and start using knowledge cards, go on what they call expeditions on specific places. Like, let's organize a class trip to the Statue of Liberty. It's a great idea, but that's a lot to pull off in just one day, right? Transportation, money, getting there. But as we would have said in New York, schlepping there. But Google Earth, we can just zoom down to the Statue of Liberty, go on one of their expeditions, which will be to the Statue of Liberty, look inside, look outside, talk about its history. Where did we get it? Oh, it came from France. It's such a simple tool. So let's talk about what specific questions. You get the guys in class looking at this big globe. Where do you live? Do you know the places around your home? Years ago, I was doing a class on talking about places people would like to live when they became an adult. And it was fascinating to me. Everybody knew their hometown, but nobody knew what was around the hometown, because you need concrete information for people with cognitive disabilities. So if you say, would you like to live in Connecticut? You better show them Connecticut in some way, either physically or somehow show them, this is Connecticut. This is what makes it different. Okay. What's your nationality? Have you ever gone back in time? Well, I'm Irish. Have you ever gone back to Ireland and learned about that people? Well, you can do that through Google Earth. What is the capital of New York? I spent a long time doing advocacy work, teaching people how to advocate for themselves. And a lot of that was politically advocating politically for budgets. Guess what? And it was a challenge when I would try and say, well, what's the capital of New York State? And people would say Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, it's not. It's Albany. Let's find out where Albany is. Okay. What places would you like to visit? Do you always just want to stay where you are? I don't think so, right? I want to travel the world. And what places would you like to go? You just got a new job. How are you going to get there? How far is it from your house? Google Earth can tell you. I have to walk north to my job. But what is north? I really don't understand it. And do any of you guys in class use Google Maps or Apple Maps to get around? How do you use it? Do you use it just for taking buses, or can you use it for walking or biking? How exactly do you use it? Lots of conversations can come from this. And now, again, I talk like an old man because I guess I am, but I went to a group home once and I was talking about how people should speak up for themselves and all that. And they said, oh boy, we missed that big Oktoberfest party up at Bear Mountain State Park in New York. And I said, why? Well, we didn't figure out how far it was and how much it would cost. So get folks involved in this. Let them plan the trip. If they so much want to go on this trip, let them learn about it. So we can use the tools of technology and advocacy to make it a possibility. So here, the next city north of us here in Wallingford is Rutland, Vermont, and we're in Rutland County. So I just asked Google, hey, I use Google Assistant, tell me the most interesting places in Rutland County, New York. And so it gave me a list of some items. Okay, great. I don't know much about them, but I guess I can find out about them. So I can say, well, does this place sound interesting? What are the hours? Are there any tours? Lots of times you can get tours of places with a docent for free and arrange that all in advance. Is it going to cost us money? How much per person? Do we need to bring food with us? Or can we buy food there? Do we have any money to bring with us? How long is it going to take? Is it going to be really tight in the hours of school or day program times? Can we take pictures there? Are we allowed to take pictures? And once you settle on the place, there's still going to be somebody that wants to do something else. And so the easiest, fairest way to do it is leave it to chance. And there's this great app Decide Now. It's not expensive. I think it's $3. And you put the names of the choices around the wheel, you spin it, and wherever the spinner, whatever the spinner lands on is what the trip is going to be. So now that you know where you're going, you can use the Reminders app and make a list of the things that you have to do for the trip, money to bring, the kind of clothing, what's the weather going to be like? Is it cold outside? Who's going to take some pictures? Just don't leave it to anybody. You can assign a picture person to either take pictures or videos. And maybe we can make a memory book of this that we can bring back to the other people in the school and show them, well, this is this attraction. You should also go to this. Get them involved, though. That is so important, to get them involved and not just have them sitting in a passive position, because as they get older, they are going to be more on their own in the adult care system and have to make more decisions. There's not going to be 5 people at their job. There's going to be one person and that's them at the job and maybe a job coach. But they have to learn more and more how to rely upon themselves. I was at another session this morning, a great session. Beth Post was talking about some great resources, and I only have a couple of them, but the idea of reading, I've seen it in adults where unless they practice it, they lose it. So if it's a small thing like read the baseball scores or the basketball scores in your local paper, it has to be continually used to become better and better. So in the adult system, there's not the kind of resources where people can spend a lot of time teaching people to read. So we can rely upon technology to maybe help us out with that. So Newsela, I'm sure many of you know about Newsela. I think it's a great group activity because you can go around the classroom and many people can try reading at different reading comprehension levels and give everybody a chance. If it's a slow process, it's a slow process, but give everybody that chance to participate. And then you can talk about it. Great thing about Newsela, they have it on a lot of topical things happening in the world like climate change. And that makes it an interesting time. So here's one about the disappearance of polar bears and how they're trying to track the migration. That's a whole discussion. What can we do about climate change in our classroom or at our agency? What little thing can we do? Tar Heel Reader has been mentioned by many today, and it's a great resource, simple books that you can enjoy and on a variety of topics. And you can create your own. There's thousands of them already created. It has switch access. Great program. And here's an example. Well, what would you like to do after school? Well, I'd like to be a veterinarian. And okay, well, what's a veterinarian? There's doctors that care for animals. Okay, great. Well, you have to go to school for years of school. But even something like you're interested in animals, well, an entry point is becoming a vet tech. Well, what's that? Well, let's go and find out if there's courses on becoming a vet tech. And I know at community colleges there are. So you can help somebody not just saying, I like animals, I want to work with them. Let's make it tangible. So perhaps it's achievable. And we'll have to plan about how that person can go to community college, get a certificate, be supported in their education, and be successful. I don't have the visuals on this, but you can go onto YouTube and take a look at Sensory Lightbox before you buy it. A fantastic program that allows people to do outlines of various objects. And you can use one finger, you can use 5 fingers, you can use your wrist whatever you can do. But it can make some wonderful passages, like you can turn on blowtorch and you go across the screen, and it makes everything into a blowtorch. Or you can do something seasonal. You can take leaves and scatter leaves across the screen. The key to this is really asking some interesting questions about what you're doing. So here are some of the options: a glowworm, a volcano, I'm just trying to look on the other side. Mumble, everything mumbles when you press that one. And there's 2 or 3 screens that are attached to each of this. One of them is leaves, one of them is snowflakes. And so, okay, that's great that you're making snowflakes go across the screen, but what are these things associated with? Snowflakes, winter, Christmas time, holiday time. What season are we going into now? Well, we're going into fall. I wonder if any leaves are going to fall. Yes, they will. In fact, you can make them fall on your sensory light path machine. What is your favorite season? Why? Can we control the seasons? With climate change, it's making it harder and harder. There's lots of things where you can go under the sea. Okay. What things live in the sea? Are there bodies of water near us? Oceans, rivers? What are they called? Have you ever visited them? Balloons. One of the gestures launches a series of balloons into the sky. That's great. But with all those balloons going up, what causes the balloon to go up? What makes it lift? How do you get the hot air into the balloon and then it goes upwards? How does that work? How do you steer a balloon? It seems so random, but I know there's balloon races. Well, how does that happen? I don't quite know. So all of these things are observational, but you can really get the group to participate, and that generates a lot of additional questions and interaction. So we're talking about some ideas for creativity, things that we're not used to seeing every day. Okay, we're talking about really listening, not just to me, but to the other people in the class or the activity room that are contributing their thoughts. Okay, and looking at something very closely. You're going to have to do this in life. Somebody gives you directions to how to get someplace, to take a bus, and then you go this and you transfer it to this bus. You're going to have to be able to focus on that. And the most important thing, the thing that I hope is really regarded as important in the field of people with disabilities is that everybody learns. We learn at different rates, but we all learn. My Jessica, I've told this story so many times, people are probably sick of it. But I remember standing in the driveway of our house, waiting for a paratransit van to pick her up to take her to her day program. Across the street, stop sign. And this is somebody, I think she was in her late 20s at the time. She looked across at the stop sign, and for the first time in her life, she said S-T-O-P, stop. So maybe, Jessie's 42 now, maybe by the time she's 60, she'll say something from Hamlet. I don't know, but she continues to learn. Just because we have an artificial demarcation point of 21 or 22, you're finished with school and you go on to the adult world, it doesn't mean that you stop learning. You learn things every day, unless you have something chronic and a terrible disease that starts destroying your brain, but that's a whole nother story. As long as you have the wherewithal and you're willing to try and also supported to try, we all keep learning. I think if our system of adult care really understood the importance of this, they wouldn't be as focused on health and safety, because they would realize you can be happy and safe, but are you actually living? Are you actually having an exciting day? Unfortunately, I'm sure many of you have had this experience of having loved ones that went into nursing care. And during my visits to my dad, I would see these people in wheelchairs all gathered around the nursing station, not doing anything. It was just convenient for the nursing staff that they were all in one place and they could be observed in one place. But within each person, there's a memory of their life, a story. Each of us have fascinating stories. Just think, if I could approach one person and say, can you tell me, what was it like when you went to wherever? You went to work, you went to war. What was it like when you got married? And try and get all those stories out of the people. And by doing so, you're making the brain work. You're making those neurons, those synapses, all getting excited, forming new pathways. And that person isn't just an adult Caucasian, 110 pounds with diabetes and blah, blah, blah. He is a full person of capabilities. Even though he might have some physical limitations, he still is alive and thinking. I asked my dad, he must have been in his early 80s at the time. I said, you were in World War II in the Pacific. How did you get from Brooklyn, New York to India where you served? And he remembered all those years later, every troop train, every airplane, every ship that he took over there. He couldn't remember if he had dinner yet, but he remembered all that. So there's things inside of each of us that we can bring out and share with others. That's my hope. That's my dream. That's what I want to do as I pursue plastic learning. I hope that you'll take some time, get in touch with me, and I'll try and keep posting activities like this to my Twitter account and to plasticlearning.com. And I'm a parent primarily, but I'm somebody that really thinks that each of us is extraordinarily special and that we can tap into things that we don't even know about. Let's keep pushing that through school, through adult agencies, and make this a really perfect world. Thank you so much for listening. And my slide deck is in my session notes. And I hope you have a good afternoon. Thank you so much for your attention.